Behind the Brand features the people who are making things happen. Get insights to grow your business from the experts who've done it. Get Behind the Brand. Sponsored by DocuSign, the global standard for e-signature. Get your free trial at DocuSign.com/Behind the Brand.
The best.
We're Atari. We have the vision, and we invented the technology.
A phenomenon that spread like wildfire around the planet.
Don't watch television tonight. Play it. Introducing the new Atari.
Hi, I'm Brian Elliott. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Brand. Today I'm here with Nolan Bushnell, one of the founding fathers of the video game industry, founder of Atari and 20 other businesses like the Chuck E. Cheese restaurant franchise, current CEO of Brainrush. Nolan, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
I always ask my guests, how did you get this job? Tell us your story.
Well, I basically worked at an amusement park and played games on the big computers when I was in engineering school. And I was probably the only guy that was a carny and an engineer.
Awesome. How did you get interested in video games? I mean, you're one of the pioneers, had huge success. I mean, how did you become interested in that?
I always feel like you stand on people's shoulders, and the guy that I stood on the shoulders of was a guy named Steve Russell, who programmed a game called Space War on the PDP-1. And I played it at the university and fell in love with it. And because of my carny background, I said, you know, if I can make this cheap, there's a business here. And there was.
Yeah. So where did you go from there? How did you get started?
Essentially, I had to wait for the technology to catch up with me. And so I graduated, worked in industry for a year and a half. And one day, a trade magazine came across with a very low-cost computer, and I said, maybe the time is right. And went forward and never really looked back.
How did you start developing kind of gameplay principles? A lot of the stuff that you started and pioneered is still so prevalent and pervasive today. What did you look at? Did you look at like what people wanted to do? Did you look at what people enjoyed doing? Was it about gamification? Talk to us about that a little bit, the process.
We were really, really lucky because we started out in the coin-operated game business.
And the Midway games and...
Yeah. And the coin-operated game business had a really good metric. You count the quarters at the end of the week, and if the people liked your game, there were a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And if they didn't like your game, there weren't that many. And so we got really good feedback as to what people liked, what they didn't like, tweaks that you could make. Sometimes you'd start out with a game that didn't earn anything, and you'd watch people play it, you could figure out what they didn't like, change that, and all of a sudden you turn it into a success. So we had a really good feedback in our early lives of the video game business. Yeah. And later on those skills went on to cartridges and the other things that we did. So
it's coming up kind of in a big time of the year with Pong, right?
Right, 40-year anniversary.
Amazing.
You know, I must have done it when I was 2 or 3. I mean, you know.
Exactly. Where's the time gone?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember it. I mean, it's so nostalgic and yet so, I mean, even to this day, classic, timeless, like so still fun. And
well, you know, there's an interesting story that I like to tell, just to give you an idea of where people's minds were. People ask me all the time, how does the TV station know that I turned the knob? Because the idea of creating an image locally was totally foreign.
What's happening with video games now? What's your take on the progression, you know?
Well, they've really become ubiquitous, you know, with all the platforms, all the availability, all of the variety. You know, you can play games everywhere, anytime, you know, except when you're driving a car.
So do you consider yourself a gamer?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I still like puzzle games. I'm really not good on the first-person shooters. As you get old, you lose reaction time, and my kids can just mop me up. But if there's stealth and guile, I'm your man.
Awesome. I want to talk a little bit about, you know, building a business, because, you know, people are watching this show. They're entrepreneurs. They're in startup mode, wherever they are, and they're really trying to put it together. What advice would you give them about having a startup right now?
I believe that most entrepreneurs today make the same mistake. They all think that they can't start until they get venture capital or some money, when in fact, most of the time, they should get their business started without money. And people say, well, how do you do that? And I say, it's happening all the time. And a lot of times, people want to be entrepreneurs, but they're kind of looking for a block because they don't want to really face their dreams. You know, I'm going to be a hugely successful entrepreneur if I could just get somebody to raise money for me.
Yeah, there's that if-only statement, right?
Yeah.
Which becomes a crutch, or can become a crutch.
It's a crutch.
Yeah.
And Atari started with $250 of paid-in capital. Actually, it was $500. $250 from me, $250 from my partner. And that's all the money that went into the company until we got venture capitalized. We got some, I think we raised $3 million, but we were already at $40 million in sales.
So did you start with a proof of concept? I mean, were you pretty much self-sufficient?
We started out as a work-for-hire company. We basically designed and licensed it to others.
White label.
White label.
Yeah.
And it was after we did Pong, and it was turned down by we said, okay, we've got this free, let's just see if we can put it in a box and sell it.
They didn't catch the vision? I mean, they didn't like it?
They didn't like the fact that it was only a two-player game. It never happened in the coin-op space before.
That was sort of the thing that helped you launch into the atmosphere, right? And get noticed, get the press,
Exactly.
get people's attention, and it blew up. Where did it go from there? Was it sort of meteoric, or was it gradual?
Meteoric. I mean, we basically, from this time, 40 years ago, for the next 3 years, we could not build machines fast enough. And it was in the days when we had our own factory, we were assembling them, we had lines of girls pushing,
Yeah.
caterpillars in circuit boards and soldering them and testing them and doing all that. And we were just growing like a weed.
Couldn't meet the demand fast enough.
Yeah. It was great.
That's awesome. Things were great at that time, but what were some of the challenges that you had with that kind of explosive growth?
Cash. You can't make enough profit to run your business in a normal way without capital. And so we had to turn our inventory literally every 4 days.
Wow.
Because, and so we funded the company basically through our vendors. Our vendors would give us 30, 60 days. We'd build the product and ship it for cash every 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that was positive cash flow. It was only a problem when all of a sudden we had a glitch in our production, and all of a sudden you ended up with stuff on the floor for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks because you didn't have a part or you made a design error or something like that.
What kind of advice would you give to people sort of in that same boat? What would you have done differently if you could have? Or were you just sort of stuck with it?
Well, I think that most of my advice, I consider Atari to have been a masterstroke of doing a lot with a little. As I got a little bit older, I got a little sloppy. And I had the temerity to say I can make it faster than I can piss it away. Mm-hmm. Not true. And I basically got involved in a robotics company that I did not foresee the technical problems that I'd have. I've always thought that marketing was the difficult thing. If you can sell it, you can always figure out a way to build it.
So were you trying to automate and look for efficiencies?
This was actually a personal robotics company
Separate
later
venture.
after Atari.
Okay.
And that's where I put a whole bunch of money in it and just could not solve the problems. And it was a big lesson for me. And I would never ramp up manufacturing without having all the technical problems solved again.
Yeah, it
was really stupid.
It's good advice. It's good advice. Let's talk a little bit about some of the core principles in gaming today. We see a lot of gamification happening. We see it with mobile apps, platforms like even Foursquare, Facebook Check-in, where we're leaving kind of a digital footprint of where we're at. And, in some foreseeable future, if not today, gamification is happening with apps and all kinds of things. What's your take on that?
Well, I believe that the best is yet to come. I think that we're just at the beginning of game evolvement. The reality is that it is such a creative medium, and it melds a really good level of emerging technology in a very, very special way. And I think that mesh networks and geo-positioning and augmented reality, all of these things are going to be really, really important. I mean, I think that we're less than 5 to 6 years away from the holodeck, which is kind of pretty cool, or Westwood, or some of we're here in Westwood.
So do you see, like all gaming, the platform in general going to the cloud? Is that what you're talking about?
I think some will. I think that the simple games will stay, on your smartphone and on your iPad and various things. You can almost not talk about the gaming business anymore because it is just proliferated into so many threads that you almost have to focus on each thread.
So seeing mobile as its own platform, seeing console as its own, is that what you're talking about?
Right.
Yeah.
And cloud as its own. I mean, you're seeing more and more compute power being built into a television set. And so with cloud computing and a network connection and a television set, you're a gamer.
Yep. What do you think live has done for the video game business? Being able to play someone across the country or across the world in real time.
I think the human being will always be social. And part of being social is to compete and to collaborate and to, create a raiding party and move into the tundra as a horde.
Yeah.
And so I think this is all fun stuff. This is all part of our evolutionary brain, and it was bound to happen.
Yeah, it's amazing. Some of these guys and girls are spending 6, 8, 10, 14 hours a day becoming the expert or the champion, and their motivation ranges from a vanity play to being a true influencer, right, in their particular tribe or their community.
And there's some people that are making some serious money. They're millionaire professional players in Korea right now, and some in the United States.
Yeah, and then brands are paying attention, right, because they've got this massive audience, this massive following, and brands are trying to plug into that also. So we're seeing video game stars, even like a YouTube personality like iJustine, who's a huge gamer. Right. She's sort of locked arms with Xbox, and she's got a massive following. Yeah. And we're seeing her on Spike TV, and we're seeing her in Microsoft commercials and TV spots all over the place. So it's a whole new world for the players and the brands combined, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's one of the most difficult things you've done in your business life?
The difficult part is when to give up. And I am really, really reticent to do that. And sometimes there's a concept or a project that is before its time, after its time will never come.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you're just bumping up against obstacles that will ultimately yield to you. Making that judgment call is the hardest thing you can do as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'd like to know the answer to that too. How do you figure that out? How do you know? What are some of the signs, at least, you think?
I like companies that have some natural velocity. That means there is some demand. If you quit advertising, if you quit doing everything, every once in a while the phone will ring and with an order. Mm-hmm. And even if it's not enough to put you in positive cash flow, that at least says that there's some demand for what you're doing.
They want more.
They want more.
Yeah.
At least somebody does.
Yeah.
And you figure for every one of those that wants more, that know about you, there's probably 20 million out there that are in the same situation, but they don't know about you yet.
Right.
And but then you calculate on the back of the napkin, oh, gee, but that's going to cost me $2.47 to get that person to sign up, and that will yield me $1. Uh-oh.
Yeah. Still upside down.
Still upside down.
Yeah.
And those are really hard judgment calls.
How important is company culture? How important are people in the development of a new company? Talk about that a little bit.
Corporate culture is everything. If you think of the first 5 or 6 people that you have on your team, if any one of them is a toxic, your whole company will grow with that deformed limb.
Yeah.
Or deformed feature. And so you've got to make sure that your corporate culture is sound and your corporate structure is sound. The number of really screwed up capital structures that companies have with entrepreneurs is amazing. And where they always get into trouble is giving stock for work.
Yep.
Because the stock stays when the work stops.
Right.
And that really creates this thing where the guy's off in Tahiti and he still owns a big percentage of the company and he never put any money in and he helped a little bit, but he was basically a screw up. And now what do? He's got the stock. And I just recommend to never ever issue stock without a very, very tight buyback provision.
It's good advice.
You've got to really make sure that your capital structure is sound and doesn't lead to toxicity in the future. I've seen companies fail strictly on that issue.
So how do you get people to really catch the vision? When you're one of the founders and you put the blood, sweat, and tears into the business, it's not difficult. But then as you start to grow, you really need people to adopt and capture the vision that you've got to carry yourself into the next phase. How do you do that?
The most important thing I hire for is one characteristic: enthusiasm. There are people who are basically optimistic and happy and engaged in life. And those people just carry a cloud of capability around with them. And I try very, very hard to only hire enthusiastic people and to fire people who are wet blankets.
Attitude makes a big difference, doesn't it?
And I believe that you can train for everything if you have enthusiasm around you.
That's awesome advice. That really is. I think a lot of these companies have the best intentions, and then it's so difficult, right, to get people to really capture the vision, because they may not always be 100% invested like you are, but attitude is a great part of it.
I think you can get them to be invested. And the trick is, once you get a person to start using our company, and that's where stock options, and that's where shared vision and celebrate together. I'm going to tell you a secret.
Okay, I'm listening.
I've just written a book called Finding the Next Steve Jobs, which is all about this. How do you find and hire creative people and create a nurturing environment for creating the new iPhone, for creating and building Toy Story, and doing all these things.
Yeah.
Because I was the only person that ever gave Steve Jobs a job. And so I felt that a lot of people have been asking me, well, what did I find about him? And the answer was, he was intense and enthusiastic about everything he did. He was a guy that acted
Passionate.
over and over again, passionate. And that is the gold standard of entrepreneurship.
It's awesome advice. How do you stay focused? If you're You're a very ambitious, very active entrepreneur. You have been for 40 plus years. How do you stay focused, and how do you keep a balance?
Squirrel? No. That is my biggest problem. I have a curious mind. I get going down a rat hole all the time. I always have 2 or 3 ideas that I'm germinating, but you got to get the work done.
Are you good at delegating? You let people,
I'm
run
very
this
good
in?
at delegating.
Yeah.
And
So you're the idea guy. You're the visionary.
well, unfortunately, I wish it were just that. But it turns out that you have to create structure, you have to be involved in hiring, particularly in the early days, and you really are the chief salesman for your business. Business development and deals and joint ventures and other things, unfortunately, it just seems like anybody but the CEO doesn't work. And so I end up spending way too much time with attorneys and
You're stuck in the
accountants.
weeds.
But you got to do it. But
Yeah.
I love the technology part.
Let's talk a little bit more about technology as it's kind of blossomed in to include social media and other things. How has social media, you think, influenced the video game industry or helped entrepreneurs in general with businesses? You have Facebook at 1 billion users. You've got all kinds of different platforms out there. YouTube with video, Twitter.
One of the expensive parts of video gameness is marketing, discoverability.
Yeah.
How do you stand out with 250,000 other games on the iPhone?
Yeah.
Well, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And the social networks properly deployed can be a way to get discovered without spending a pile of cash. I mean, I'm always looking for what I call the innovator's bonus. And what is an innovator's bonus? It's really where you do something different enough that you're remarkable, i.e., people remark about you.
Right.
And so the more you can be creative and punch through the noise of sameness, get some virality, get the social media engaged in your stuff, and you can get $10 million worth of advertising for a nickel and a dime.
So before we finish, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Well, I'm doing a lot of interesting things in education right now.
Tell me about it.
And we're developing software that teaches kids 10 times faster than a classroom. And we believe that
Is it using gameplay?
using gameplay.
Yeah.
Think of it as game technology, but not gamification
Right.
per se. But it turns out that if kids learn quickly, they think it's fun.
Yes, and you get a confidence, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
why I never loved math, because I was not good at it.
Well, our stuff will make it so that you'll be good at math and love it. And we actually think we can teach 4 years of high school in 6 months
Wow.
with better retention, better longevity, better understanding. And what I hope,
This is the Brain Rush
This is
company?
Brain Rush.
Yep.
and what I hope is that we will take that extra time and reintroduce Maker, shop, build stuff, make a YouTube video, market on eBay. I believe that any junior high school student should be aware and facile with the digital tools.
So this is an incubator of sorts. You're really nurturing the next generation of creators and business
Exactly.
owners and entrepreneurs. That's awesome.
I mean, if you want to have real enthusiasm about the kids who are growing up right now, go to Maker Faire. Magical.
And so, is the product out yet, or is it still in development? Where's it at in the cycle?
We are doing some tests with a product called Wordplay, which just teaches Spanish vocabulary. But we will be real loud second quarter of next year,
Oh, that's exciting.
making a difference.
We have been spending a few minutes with Nolan Bushnell, one of the founding fathers of the video game industry, founder of Atari and 20 other businesses like the Chuck E. Cheese restaurant franchise, and now CEO of the company Brain Rush. Nolan, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
I had fun.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This Behind the Brand episode is brought to you by DocuSign, the global standard for e-signature. Get your free trial at DocuSign.com/behindthebrand.